Me who can't see anything out of that. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to what we call the Lunch with the Books. Today our theme is lycanthropy. As you can see, we just watched The Wolfman, who was here for the film. Did you enjoy that? Yeah. They don't make them like that. See, he's a man who's a wolf, not a wolf who's a man. If you would turn off your cell phones. So today what we're going to try to do for you is some stories. If the class will come to order, please. Always trouble at this table. First of all, there's no program next week because I will be on vacation in Romania. On November 8th, we will return with writer Chris Rodell from Pittsburgh. Its new book is called Heaven and Hell in Heaven and Hell, a long-distance social media afterlife love story. So that gives you some idea. And so this evening, our friend Adrian Niles will be here to perform at our official Halloween party. So if you wore a costume today, you could win. I don't even think I only saw one costume this afternoon. Unless that's not a costume. I don't know. Yes, so she's the winner. You see what you did there? Okay. But tonight we'll have another winner, and Adrian will perform. Adrian, we wrote a song called Werewolves of Wheeling. Well, it's actually not a original song. It's a parody of a song that Warren Zevon wrote called Werewolves of London. But we changed it up a little bit, and he performed it, and I think you're going to see the video at the end of the proceedings today, and I think you'll enjoy it. He did a great job, and Jamie Peck was the sound man, and he did some of the instrumentation as well. And yeah, so that's everything. Okay, so don't forget to get some treats. And we have 4 or 5 stories, depends on how it goes today. The first of which comes from a visual artist and a writer and a storyteller and a former librarian and a current member of this library's board. And her name is Cheryl Harshman. Here she comes, and her story is called No, that's not her story. Her story is called The Werewolves Picnic. Here she is, Cheryl Harshman.
This is such an exciting time of year, isn't it? We all get a little silly. We all remember what it's like to be a child. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not so good. And I've done my own parody of The Werewolves of London. You'll hear parts of it. And I've also come to bastardize all of children's literature, which is where my heart lies. Those of you who've known me in the past know that I was a children's librarian and a storyteller. And so anyway, as I was preparing this august document before me, I happened to be listening to Neil Gaiman. And he writes books. And he mentioned that he had been listening to Maurice Sendak. Maurice Sendak, author, illustrator of Where the Wild Things Are. He was talking to Art Spiegelman. Now, those of you who are faithful Lunch with Books people might recognize that name, Spiegelman, as the author, illustrator of Mouse. Of course you do. And to Art, Maurice said, I remember my childhood vividly. I knew terrible things, but I knew I mustn't let the adults know that I knew. It would scare them. And that's the story that I bring you today, The Werewolves Picnic. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another, his mother called him "wild thing," and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anybody. That night, in Max's room, the moon grew and grew and grew until something very unusual happened to Max, and he ceased being a naughty boy, and he became, it's too many. How do we go back? Here we go. I had my finger on the button. Okay, and he became a werewolf of Wheeling. A werewolf of Wheeling. And Max walked out of his room and in and out of weeks and over a year to where the wild werewolves of Wheeling are. Now we get the picture. And when he came to the place where the wild werewolves of Wheeling are, they roared their terrible roars, and they gnashed their terrible teeth, and they rolled their terrible eyes, and they showed their terrible claws. Until Max said, "Be still." And he tamed them with the magic trick of looking into their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened of him, and they called him the most wild werewolf of all. And they made him king, not queen. Made him king of all the wild werewolves in Wheeling. Ahoo! Werewolves of Wheeling. They kind of look like werewolves, if you're imagining. "And now," cried Max, "let the wild rumpus start." And they danced in the moonlight, and they howled many songs, werewolf songs, and this is one of them. See if you can remember the melody, because I'm not going to torture you too much with singing the melody. "If you go down to Tunnel Green, you're sure of a big surprise. If you go down to the market tonight, you better go in disguise. For every werewolf that ever there was will gather there for certain, because tonight's the night the werewolves have their picnic." You got it. I'm even bastardizing children's songs. Every werewolf who's ever been good is sure of a treat tonight. There's lots of marvelous people to eat and wonderful games to play. Beneath the streets where nobody sees, they'll hide and seek as long as they please, 'cause that's the way the werewolves have their picnic. Ahoo! Werewolves of Wheeling. Ahoo! Werewolves of Wheeling. If you go down to Mountwood tonight, you better not go alone. If you go down to Greenwood tonight, it's safer to stay at home. For every werewolf that ever there was will gather there for certain, because tonight's the night the werewolves have their picnic. Picnic time for werewolves. The little werewolves are having such a wonderful time tonight. Watch them, catch them unawares, and see them dance beneath the full moon. See them gaily gad about. They love to play and shout. More than one of us know that song. They love to play and shout. They never have any cares. But when the sun begins to rise, they start to rub their bloodshot eyes. Their mummies will take them. Their mummies, get it out. Their mummies will take them home to bed because they're tired little werewolves then. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Kyle has to follow that. Kyle is our relatively new promotional director. I'm not even, what's your title? Marketing? King of Marketing and Web Management. Yeah. He's the one who did a lot of work on the video you're going to see later. But when I was kicking the idea around, I said, well, we'll just have storytellers come up with stories about werewolves at Wheeling. And 10 minutes later, he had a story on my desk. And I was impressed. So here's Kyle.
What he didn't tell you, or what he didn't tell me was, I had to follow Cheryl Harshman, which isn't going to be easy. So if I wasn't nervous before, I'm nervous now. So my story is called Capitol Werewolves. So my background is I worked at the Capitol Theater before I came here. And when Sean asked me to do this, I was working on some Capitol Theater materials. And a werewolf story isn't something I would normally write. So I just envisioned the Capitol Theater werewolf story. So here we go. You've probably seen the recent renovations to the Wheeling Suspension Bridge. You may not be aware that the historic bridge's massive cables are attached to a stone abutment in the basement of the next to the coal-fired boilers that our story takes place. On October 28th, 1933, back up. On October 28th, 1933, audiences would enjoy at the Capitol Theater a new performance. At 11 o'clock p.m., they would enjoy the Halloween WWVA Jamboree. A new movie, Meet the Baron, starring Jack Pearl and Jimmy Durante, would be shown prior to that performance. The stories on the screen at the theater tell of fantasies in faraway lands. Audiences think that the stories are imaginary, but they do not know what is below their feet. Few people ever venture the 2.5 floors below the Capitol Theater seating. This is where workers shovel coal into the giant coal-fired boilers to keep the theater complex warm on fall evenings. And it is here that a secret is held that few people know about until now. In a small room next to the boilers, there lived a werewolf, Miss Priscilla D. Wolf. Miss Priscilla had previously lived in a cave that was located on the steep banks above the train tracks next to the Ohio River. The cave was very close to the giant stone abutment of the Wheeling Suspension Bridge, where few people ventured. She was precisely 70 years old on this evening. When the Capitol Theater was built in 1928, Miss Priscilla's cave home was to be destroyed. Disturbing werewolves is never advised. Since werewolves are a little-known protected species in West Virginia, the state arranged to build a room around Miss Priscilla's abutment of the suspension bridge in the basement of the Capitol Theater, rather than causing unnecessary aggravation. The architect, Charles Bates, agreed. The boiler room workers of the new Capitol Theater enjoyed that Miss Priscilla fed mainly on dog-sized rodents that crept into the boiler room from the river. She kept the place sanitary. There was also the occasional hobo that passed by on the train tracks out back and tried to seek a good night's sleep in the basement, only to meet an unfortunate end. The evening of October 28, 1933 was unlike any other. Most people know that the WWVA Jamboree performances at this time at the Capitol Theater were held at midnight because there were movies playing in the theater beforehand. They do not know that on October 28th, the Halloween WWVA Jamboree could have been held earlier in the evening. They also may not know that this particular evening was a full moon. They definitely do not know that werewolf pups are always born on a full moon before Halloween. It is for this reason that the second showing of Meet the Baron was scheduled on a Saturday. Miss Priscilla would give birth to her only pup, Bates D. Wolf, on this evening. Stay with me. Miss Priscilla had met one of those low-down werewolves of London passing through on a train behind the theater. Warren Zevon would write a song about him many years later. Once he found out the werewolf pup was on its way, he caught the next train out of Wheeling. When the full moon before Halloween was coming, Mr. Duvall, one of the boiler workers, told the theater manager what was happening. The theater managers intentionally scheduled the second showing of Meet the Baron on Saturday so that the WWVA officials would book the theater for the Halloween Jamboree after the theater had been cleaned from the movies. By this time, Miss Priscilla would have finished howling and it would be quiet enough to hold the Jamboree. The managers didn't want a sold-out audience sitting upstairs to hear their resident werewolf howling like crazy. At 10 o'clock p.m. on October 28, 1933, a werewolf was born after the movies had finished, the theater had been cleaned, and before the Halloween Jamboree began. The birth took place in the humble conditions of the dusty and damp basement of the Capitol Theater next to the boilers and the suspension bridge above it. Horrific conditions for a human, but not bad for a werewolf. The pup was named Bates D. Wolf in honor of the Capitol Theater architect who helped protect Miss Priscilla's home. Since werewolves live long lives, when the Jamboree USA returned to the Capitol Theater in 1969, Bates D. Wolf was still a young werewolf. He would learn his deep bass voice from listening to Johnny Cash through the floorboard. Hello, I'm Bates D. Wolf. Yeah, that'd get you. He would learn to moan from George Jones, who would occasionally stumble into the stairwell and cry over a recent breakup with Tammy. Oh. He would learn to comb his long black mane from pictures of the silver fox, Charlie Rich. Although no one knew he existed due to the place of his birth, Bates D. Wolf was quickly becoming one of the world's greatest country music singing werewolves. Bates couldn't help put his werewolf twist on the songs he heard. He tried to sing Charlie Pride's Kiss an Angel Good Morning. He didn't know what an angel was, so he sang Eat a Rat's Head in the Morning. He also tried to sing Merle Haggard's I Think I'll Just Stay Here and Drink. However, he didn't drink alcohol, so he said, I think I'll just stay here and eat this hobo's femur. Eventually, the old coal boilers were replaced with electric furnaces and the workers were gone. Miss Priscilla died in 2003 at the age of 140. When the Capitol Music Hall closed temporarily, Bates D. Wolf moved from the old home. His location today is unknown. Some say he has been seen at Tunnel Green and Wetzel's Cave. There has been multiple sightings of him at Jamboree in the Hills in 2010. However, everyone who saw him there was too intoxicated to take seriously. My mother's father was one of the boiler workers who helped Bates D. Wolf's delivery. The employees at the theater in those days took a secret oath they would never tell the secret that lie in the basement. When I went to work at the Capitol Theater, he told me. However, in those days, if you told the secret, you were subject to 3 outcomes: Miss Priscilla, the coal-fired boiler, or Bill Lies.
How about that? Another hand for Kyle. He said he used to work at the Capitol. When I was there with him, they showed me a picture of Mr. Bates that's kept in Charles Bates, the architect, in a locked glass case, but every day it moves. That's right? That's right. So, it's not a werewolf story, but it's for Halloween. Okay, now see, the rotation here is one professional, one non-professional, another. So here's our next professional writer. Laura Jackson Roberts is an environmental writer, an essayist, and a humorist. So writing a werewolf story was a bit of a challenge for her, but I'm sure she did a great job. Here's Laura. Come on up, Laura.
So I wasn't aware that we were supposed to be howling for this. My children specifically asked me not to do that, so we're going to skip that part. Okay. Can you guys hear me? I'm a little bit short. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to mess with it. Oh, I got it. Do I got it? I got it. To my dearest pumpkin, I fear my pursuit of the werewolf has become an obsession. I've been tracking Beauregard for 5 straight weeks, including those 2 when I lost him in Pittsburgh, though that was due not to ill attention or a lack of vigilance, but because I got off on the wrong exit just outside of the Fort Pitt tunnels and ended up in a town called Monroeville. I did attempt to change course, but was stymied by a seemingly endless stretch of fluorescent orange cones and a detour that took me around the city. I found myself on the Highland Park Bridge, but no one would let me merge. And thus, I remained there for quite some time, enduring the slings, arrows, and extended fingers of Pittsburgh's finest. Beauregard, meanwhile, was prowling the North Shore. I knew it had to be him, because a report emerged from the National Aviary that a sulfur-crested cockatoo named Stanley had been ripped from his cage and devoured in the night. The director found the bars bent and a mess of feathers on the floor. Their security cameras captured a furry blur of movement, but no discernible features. They were disturbed by the scene, but the aviary director didn't pursue police involvement. Apparently, the cockatoo had learned several swear words and was telling visiting second graders to F off and suggesting that they kiss his crested butt. The director admitted to me in private that despite the anxiety of the break-in and subsequent property destruction, who or whatever had eaten Stanley had done them quite a favor. I believe, based on one obscure report, that Beauregard then crossed the river and took himself for a ride on the incline. A group of celebrating bachelorettes reported a strange individual ducking into their funicular just as the doors were closing. They admit they were considerably inebriated, but 2 described the individual as tall, hulking, and in need of a shave. A third claims he begrudgingly donned a "Here Comes the Bride" t-shirt and posed for a selfie with the women. Alas, these ladies were intoxicated enough that they had the camera facing the wrong way. And the photo reveals little more than a blurry finger and a discarded can of Iron City on the bench. Nevertheless, as they remember it, Beauregard rode to the top, wished the bride-to-be a long, happy marriage, and ran off into the Mount Washington night. Nothing more has come out of Pittsburgh. Dear Pumpkin, I'm on the road again. Reports of a shirtless, hirsute man in the town of Wheeling, West Virginia, suggest that Beauregard has crossed the state line and is heading toward the Ohio River. The trip from Pittsburgh, which should have taken only an hour, took 11. I'm unfamiliar with the customs of West Virginia's northern panhandle, but they seem to be holding some sort of extended road construction festival. The celebration centers around the ritual destruction of every bridge between Pennsylvania and Ohio, followed by a lengthy and painstaking restoration, during which locals come out in great numbers to line up along the road in their cars. There seems to be no escaping the merriment, as there was, quite literally, an orange barrel celebration at every entrance, exit, thoroughfare, side street, and alley. As an anthropologist, I wanted so much to pause and study this fascinating and no doubt beloved Wheeling tradition, but I knew it was my chance to close in on Beauregard. Fate must have been on my side, dear Pumpkin, because when I stopped at the local coffee shop, the barista and I struck up a conversation. She mentioned in passing an odd visitor that morning. A tall, scruffy individual came in well before sunrise and ordered a soy mocha latte. I cannot imagine Beauregard imbibing something so hackneyed. His tastes have always run more along the lines of human flesh and the occasional lhasa apso in leaner times. But the woman at the counter specifically mentioned elongated teeth and a distinct body odor. Not the foul kind that breeds in armpits and feet. She likened it more to wet dog. Jackpot. Either Beauregard has been prowling this neighborhood, or the people of Wheeling need to be hosed down, taken to the dentist, and served a proper Colombian dark roast. I believe he wanders through the neighborhoods at night. Residents have reported an increase in security camera activity, and one Dimmydale doorbell cam captured notable audio. You can hear footfalls on the porch, Pumpkin, clomping feet, the scratch of a fingernail or claw on the handrail as whatever it is shifts its weight. There's a low growl, one that sent chills through my old bones, the sound of a stunning and vicious creature, not one of this world, a living myth in human canine form, always seeking a victim. In the audio clip, he breathes, inching his way along in the darkness. Then you hear a bump and a crash, followed by an expletive and a thud and a frantic scrambling. Based upon the scene I found the next morning, it appears Beauregard climbed the stairs to the porch, but before he could seek a way into the house, knocked over a planter of mums, muttered, "Oh shit," tried to sweep up the dirt with his paws, fell over a decorative barrel of straw, and fled into the night. My dearest Pumpkin, I came so close today, so close. The Wheeling PD received a call from the waterfront along the Ohio River. A stray dog was down by the dock, a jogger said. It was monstrous in size and moved faster than any canine she had ever seen. She reported that it was chasing geese, yipping as they scrambled to the water's edge. She made a special point to comment on how cute it was to see an animal enjoying itself, an observation I found curious. There were several physical features she might have seized upon: his dark fur, his excessive height, and the fact that he was wearing a pair of Banana Republic tapered khakis. But she zeroed in on his wagging tail, which leads me to believe the people of Wheeling are either a glass half full kind of people or completely oblivious. I hurried down to the waterfront, where I heard a great deal of honking and flapping. I ran over the grass and peered down into the pavilion, and there he was, Pumpkin. He ran about, nipping at the geese as they beat their wings in defense. And on a side note, my dear, I have felt pity for many of Beauregard's bloody victims over the years, but I can think of no creature who deserves it more. Though the city be friendly, the geese of Wheeling have the foulest of attitudes. Sorry. The lycanthrope may be a hellhound, but the Canada goose is no doubt the Dark Lord's finest creation. During my brief interlude by the river, I stepped in 5 green piles, was hissed at 7 times, and bitten on the elbow, calf, and left butt cheek. I digress. I crept along the walkway, Pumpkin, cannon net in hand, closer than I've ever come. I've followed this creature on foot, road, and rail, and always he's evaded me. The afternoon in Olympic National Park when those taunting Girl Scouts locked me in a porta potty and he slipped away laughing. When I stalked him through the Georgia swamp and saw a twig that looked like a snake and screamed. And when I'd recovered, he was long gone. And of course, his narrow escape out the back door of a Bavarian beer hall when I collided with a dusty serving wench. But finally, on the shores of the Ohio River, I'd caught him. A lifetime of work, study, chasing, and tracking had led me to this moment. I had only to launch the cannon net and bring the manimal down. And so it is with great shame that I confess that I did not intercept the werewolf at the waterfront at all. As I stalked through the park, something caught my eye, but it was not some minion of Satan that seized my attention. It was a groundhog, sitting on a stone wall beside a trash receptacle. As I watched, it glanced to its left and right, and then dove snout first into the garbage can. There was a good deal of rustling, and then it emerged seconds later, clutching an oddly square piece of pizza between its paws. And to my great astonishment, the varmint sat back on its haunches, sank its gleaming teeth into the crust, and began to nibble its way through the slice. When it was done, it uttered a burp, climbed down the wall, and waddled back into the bushes. My dear pumpkin, my travels have taken me around the world, and I have seen creatures most men could not dream into reality. But I have never seen a dumpster diving rodent shove a block of pizza into its cavernous gob. I was entranced. Alas, when the astounding whistle pig of Wheeling receded and I returned to my senses, I realized my target had disappeared from the waterfront. Beauregard was gone. I am heartsick and admittedly rather hungry. Dear pumpkin, today broke me. After my embarrassing failure at the waterfront, my mood hung low and black, and my energy levels rivaled that of this aging sea cucumber. A cursory search of the neighborhood around the coffee shop turned up nothing more than tired feet, a FedEx driver named Bart who told me at length about the parameters of his precancerous mole, and an opossum trapped in a garbage can. Realizing I could search no further, I wandered to the rail trail. It was a lovely evening, and the late-season crickets began to stir as the sun dipped low. It was near Tunnel Green, an area reported to be haunted by the specter of the famous hatchet slayer's first victim, that my burgeoning positivity began to wane. In the fading light, the tunnel's opening was a gaping maw hovering over the path. Two crows, perched in a dying ash tree on the hillside, quarked to one another in their tree branch language. The cold, musty air from the tunnel's dripping innards swirled out of the darkness. I am not easily frightened. After all, my life's pursuit revolves around as I crossed the tunnel's threshold. Shadow fell over me, so to shrink in the swallowed by evil, a gruff and gravelly voice cried, "On your left!" A gust of wind blasted my face, and with it, the scent of wet dog. It was not a ghost pumpkin, but a man who moving quickly through the twilight, and the whine was not the death cries of a long-departed ghost, but the whir of an electric motor. Confused, I squinted against my fog spectacles and peered out from the tunnel's mouth. It was Beauregard. On the bike path, riding an odd battery-powered vehicle, he turned back to look at me, howling with laughter as he zipped away. Once again, I am devastated and confused. It seems the trail will hold here his meaning. I don't know if I can find the will to pick it back up again. Indeed, I am a broken man. And where the fiend acquired notoriety.
Thanks, Laura. Another round of applause for Laura. Of course, we're having some technical problems. By the way, I want to ask the writers who are here to stop and see us before they leave, so we have something. Okay. That appears to be working. Is that working? Okay. So it seems like the stories are humorous. This is horror. Okay. My story is called The Texas Werewolf in Wheeling. Tom Clark was 12 years old when he found out he had a cousin who's a werewolf from Texas. Of course, Tom never knew he had a werewolf until his grandfather died. Sometimes you don't meet the extended family members until there's a funeral. And it wasn't until the funeral that Tom found out that his cousins lived in Texas at all. Tom had several thousand cousins, so it wasn't surprising that his parents never got around to mentioning these Texas people. They didn't look like the other Irish cousins. In fact, they looked a lot healthier than those who'd grown up in the Rust Belt pollution. They were tall, shiny, and suntanned, and they smiled a lot. They were exotic. They looked like movie stars. Everyone was charmed. When Tom saw one of them walk outside the funeral home for a smoke, he followed. He walked around back and arrived just as the Texan was blazing up a big Texas-sized cigar. "Well, hi, partner," he said. "I'm your cousin Tommy." "Hey, that's my name too," Tom almost blurted. Instead, he said nothing. He just stood there staring at him, happy they called him partner as if he was John Wayne and Tom was Gary Cooper. Tom envisions Tommy at Gilly's bar. That's a little confusing when you have too many bars. Riding a mechanical bull as Deborah Winger watched. You might find some anachronisms in those. Tom Clark, the Irish Catholic. The Irish Catholic. "Hey, little buddy," Tommy Travolta as he exhaled. "Can you keep a secret?" Tom nodded. Now you have to swear. That's a Texas accent. "This is just between you and me, by God. I don't tell this story just anybody. Swear." Tom nodded again. Okay then. You know what a werewolf is? Did Tom know what a werewolf was? Did this roots come all the way from Texas just now he's on Tom's turf. What did this bumpkin know about werewolves? Tom just nodded again. "Well, that's good, see, because you're looking at one." Tom looked away, turning his cigar to his mouth, and sped it into the setting sun. Just as Tom noticed the rising full moon barely visible. Tom noticed the rising full moon barely visible. His cousin. You are not, Tom said firmly. The hell did this two-stepping think he was talking to? I kind of assumed he was being lies about something school as being a werewolf to his preteen cousin behind the funeral home when the family's patriarch was dead. Did this guy got Tom and forgotten about snipe hunting and finger pulling? Well, then how do you play this? Tommy hissed, ripping up his shirt and exposing Harry's chest. Tom froze. A number of thoughts swirled through his fevered brain. That's a lot of hair. The skin under his shirt is a hell of a lot paler than his arms. Jesus, that's a lot of hair. Maybe he is aware. Where's my gun? I don't own a gun. Oh, yes, I do. It's a BB gun. Do they make silver BBs? What did I ever see in Christy McNichol? Wow. That's a lot of hair. Run. Before young Tom could move, old Tommy turned toward the now glowing full moon and into Howl, just like Lon Chaney Jr. Tom ran as fast as he could toward the door to the funeral home, his tough skin swooshing as he went. You could feel the wolfman close behind. Tommy swiped Tom with his foul, hellish claw, breaking his neck. Duck! For God's sakes, duck! Tom came screaming, running toward him. Tom started to wheel because it's Jay. Tom. This is getting confusing, Tom thought. Jake had a shotgun they must have pulled from the truck. He had a shotgun, leveled it at Tom, and hollered again. Duck, you dumbass! Hollered again. No, Tom shouted back. It's Tommy! No, Tom shouted back. It's Tommy! Tommy, shoot! The other Tom yelled. That's a good monster. That's a goddamn monster. That's a goddamn monster. He's getting away, Jake yelled. Lowering his shotgun. Jake yelled, turned to see the man, Tommy, ducking his hand about me. He felt something warm on his neck. Something warm. Bleeding. He scratched me by God. It was market biceps. What the hell was that? Tom tried to explain as he walked back into the funeral bar after his redneck cousins were redneck cousin's story. Of course, cousin Tommy did eventually return his shirt being levered to the neck. He looked utterly normal. Occasionally would glance at Tom and flash a smile. But Tom knew the secret. They were brothers. In a way, it was a dream come true. Tom couldn't wait till the next full moon. There were scores to settle, vengeance to be had, bullies to be cowed. When the next full moon finally arrived, Tom was ready. As the witching hour approached, he decided he'd better leave the house. There was no sense risking the rest of his family. He might not be able to control the predatory impulse, so he went for a long walk on the railroad track by the river. It was dusk. He removed his clothing as he entered the woods. There was no sense ruining his new Steeler jersey. When his body painfully morphed into that of a wolf, he could feel his blood rising. His skin was tingling as supercharged air follicles prepared to erupt into a coarse, beastly new mane. Tom believed he could feel his teeth and nails elongating into fangs and talons. He began to run with his knuckles along the bike trail, along the railroad track toward the suspension bridge. This is supposed to be in the 70s. As he prepared to morph into a four-legged animal. Anyone unfortunate enough to be watching, he might have looked like just another pale, fat, naked, delusional adolescent. Walking through the woods on all fours at dusk, not an uncommon sight in rural West Virginia. But in his Tom's fevered brain, he was on the verge of becoming the terrifying lycanthrope of legend, the Wolfman. Suddenly his vision blurred and began to throb with pain. Was this the beginning of the transformation? No, something was terribly wrong. Something had struck his head from the side. He heard laughter. Looking up, he saw standing on the suspension bridge, staring down, the most egregious of 8th grade bullies, a boy named Buster, and 4 of his friends. They were drinking beer and laughing at Tom, who looked down at the beer bottle on the ground at his feet. Coors Light, silver bullet. Sorry, wolf boy, Buster mocked. You're dead. Tom suddenly regretted bragging about his newfound lycanthropic powers at school all week. It was hard to get a jump on bullies when they knew and had good recon. Buster's friends broke into hysterics as Tom turned and ran, humiliated but still quite human and naked. Put some clothes on, Lard ass, screamed Buster. I've never seen a hairless wolf before. He's a poodle, shouted one of the others. Run, poodle boy, run! The laughter receded into the distance as Tom grabbed his clothes and ran for home, tears streaming down his human face. The night air was cool. It could see its breath as it looked along the darkened path, circling back to the bridge. The transformation was complete. Its powerful muscles tightened as four lethal claws ultimately gripped the earth, propelling it steadily closer to its unsuspecting prey. Its keen ears twitched. You could hear their laughter, clinking of bottles. They would be drunk by now, and still enjoying the afterglow of its humiliation. Perfect. It sniffed the air. Supersensitive canine olfactory senses roaring to life. It could smell their blood. Instinctively, its barrel chest emitted a low, steady growl. Drool slapped its black jowls as they receded in a grim lupine sneer, exposing 3-inch fangs. It crept closer, keeping to the shadows. They were beneath the bridge now. They built a fire and were huddled around it, smoking, drinking, laughing, teenage boys at their worst. The stench of their cigarettes and joints was repugnant. It snorted. What was that? Said Buster, whipping his head around in mock terror. Is that you again, little boy? They all laughed for the last time. It threw back its head and bellowed, the blood-curdling howl loud enough to wake the dead. They jumped to their feet, confused, whimpering, frozen with fear. Just before the carnage began, it smelled urine. One of them had peed himself with fright. Before they could move, it was among them, leaping, slashing, snarling, biting, a whirlwind of teeth and claws, shredding flesh, shattering bones. This is horror. They continued to massacre the remains long after they were reduced to a gory pile of severed limbs and steaming innards. Sorry if there are any children present. Slowly, it came down from the high to kill, still growling, teeth gnashing, fur mad with hot blood. It howled once more, barked, and ran off into the woods. Tom woke up in a small wooded area, surrounded by strange-looking dogs. One of them was licking blood from his fingers. Startled, he scrambled away until his face was smashed against a chain-link fence. The dog growled at him, then loped away. Tom could see people in the distance, peering into an enclosure, pointing. It took him a minute to figure out he was in the red wolf habitat at the Ogilvy Good Zoo. There was a big sign that said, Red Wolf Habitat at the Ogilvy Good Zoo. Then it all flooded back to his brain like he'd had a hard night of drinking. It was a werewolf hangover. His body was covered in sticky, drowning blood. Wait, what had he done? Buster was an asshole, but he didn't deserve that. And those others had really killed them all. He climbed the chain fence slowly because he was really bad at climbing things, and ran toward the woods. It was more of a fast walk than a run. And he made it home about an hour later, covered in tiny cuts from the brambles. He'd swiped the sheet from someone's clothesline on the way to at least cover his nakedness and blood. As he got close to the porch, he could hear voices and laughing. There, sitting on Mom's ladder, having a grand old time with Jake, the other Tom, and Texas Tommy. What the hell, Tom thought. Well, howdy, partner, Tommy beamed. Where the hell you been? Your mom's working sick. Yeah, said Jake. Where you been, dumbass? The three of them laughed, and Tom fell away with nausea. What's with the sheep? The other Tommy mocked. You a ghost now? They all laughed some more. Shut up, Tom barked. Leave me alone. Oh, now looky here, partner, said Tommy. I got something to show you. He pulled his hand from behind the ladder, and there it was. There it was. Only now Tom could see the rubber bands holding it over his huge paw. They all laughed again. Tommy howled like Ron Chaney as he pulled on the wolf mask, completing the ensemble. Gotcha! He mocked as the others fell out of their seats laughing. Sucker! Jake howled. Let's go snipe hunting, said Tom, the other Tom. Tom looked at his hands, still visibly bloodstained from the night before. Jesus, he thought. What happened last night? What actually happened? What did I do? The end. Okay. There, thank you. Let's bring up our next professional writer and storyteller. who's a frequent winner of the Irish contest of the Vandalia Gathering. And he's from Moundsville, and here he is, Rich Knoblich.
Find my story. I have a story. There's my story. All righty. Right off the bat, I'd like to say I was hesitant to accept today's invitation to discuss Werewolves of Wheeling because of the recent spate of assaults on public speakers, such as the incident at Chautauqua and Chris Rock getting bitch slapped. So in anticipation of possible hostile werewolves secretively blending in with the audience, I have taken a few precautions to ensure my safety. First, when a blue moon occurs, which is when a full moon appears twice in the same month, I invoke the power of the blue moon. Yeah. There we go. Imbibe the power of the blue moon, and you can be found with me and Bill in Mount Woods Cemetery, safely howling in the confines of the cemetery, at the full moon. Second, in werewolf folklore, it takes a silver bullet to kill El Loco Lobo. I have brought a silver bullet. In fact, I'm sad to say I killed the silver bullet. Originally, I had a six-pack of silver bullets, but I got thirsty. And third, and I repeat, I take such elaborate precautions only because of the possibility of lost my place, of rogue werewolves hiding amongst you. I have enlisted a guard for protection. Please meet my guard, Growler. There we go. Okay, how you doing, buddy? Doing okay. Hello. My name is Growler, and I'm a young wolf pup. And just your grandchildren, I have a lot of growing to do. And just like your grandchildren, I got a lot of learning to do. And just like your grandchildren, I'm a stinking rowdy! Okay, now we can begin. I'd like to open by reviewing the historical backdrop of how werewolves, which are not native to North America, came to reside in Wheeling. It is an intriguing cause-effect chain of events that begins at the conclusion of the American Revolutionary War. At the end of the war, English aristocrats were forced to relinquish their claims to property. William Penn lost Pennsylvania. Lord Baltimore lost Maryland, Oglethorpe lost Georgia, and Paul Ingalls lost Walnut Grove, etc. The initial government wished to populate the countryside and displace the Native Americans. They rewarded soldiers and officers with land grants to settle the newly acquired territory. When Europeans got wind of this free land giveaway, a mighty exodus ensued. The departure of early European stock caused the first great werewolf conclave to be convened by their leader, Alpha Big Bad Werewolf. It was held in the Romanian region of the Transylvania Alps on the outskirts of Sibiu in 1779. The results of a fact-finding committee determined that the dwindling food supply was not the result of what conspiracy theorists believed at the time. French Le Werewolf cuisine had not run amok from gastronomic experimentation, nor was Bavarian holding a factor. The committee concluded that the food supply had merely walked down to the seaports, boarded on ships, and set sail for the Americas. What, Growler, what? Sorry. False alarm. It was just Bill adjusting his boxers. Okay, thank you. The initial migration was disastrous. The lycanthrope wolfmen, ooh, big word. Yes, it is. Will you explain it to them? No. Left the trip planning up to their human wives. The unaware ladies envisioned a romantic, moonlit love boat cruise to America. About halfway across the Atlantic, all Hades broke loose when the full moon appeared. The early werewolf migrants were pitched overboard by Slavic passengers from steerage with their pitchforks. Following these early catastrophes, the human form wolfmen made the travel arrangements themselves and safe passage prevailed. Destination ports included New York, Boston, and Baltimore, while French-speaking Le Werewolves opted for New Orleans, kosher werewolves preferred Miami, and El Lobo werewolves disembarked in Cancun. Upon arrival at the eastern seaboard, the werewolves followed the trails over the Appalachians to Wheeling and other wilderness outposts. Frontier life was fraught with danger, where the two distinct species coexisted. One, an invasive species, knew the score, while the human species frequently pondered, "Where's Billy? He was here a minute ago." The werewolves were complicit in letting the Native Americans take the blame for vanishing pioneers. As manufacturing became dominant, the werewolves blended in, posing as salespeople for a variety of firms. Going on pretend sales junkets during full moons, the wolfmen wrote up fake sales tickets to submit to their bosses while frolicking in the forested mountains, enjoying the camaraderie of other miscreant werewolves. Things went well for werewolves until the great population collapse of 1919 with the depletion of human and werewolf offspring. Originally, it was blamed on a lack of iodized salts, but the statistical analysis study by Professor Heinrich von Gooddoggy debunked this theory. Instead, it was proven that households with dogs, aka werewolves masquerading as pets, tricked the family canine into taking a ride to the vet to get a flea bath. When the werewolves awoke, groggy from the anesthesia, they experienced a burning sensation in their groins. Thus ended the reproductive lives of neutered werewolves as lobos and as transformed men of the household, causing the lack of offspring. Once the ruse was discovered, werewolves initiated a PSA campaign with the message spread successfully by the butt sniff technique. No, I will not demonstrate. It brought the problem to a halt with the slogan, "Beware, beware wolf. Don't fall for the call for the doggy ride. Go hide." Over the decades, the werewolf-human relationship has settled into a symbiotic relationship. Occasionally, Officer Stahl must fill out a missing person report, but werewolves have been successful in keeping their existence in Wheeling in the dark. However, I warn you, a troubling new trend has emerged in recent years. Werewolves are boldly and brazenly walking alongside us, disguised as emotional support companions. To which I warn you, beware, beware of the werewolf there. I'm Storyteller Rich, and I'm Growler, and we thank you for the listen. We had a howling good time. Clean up Sean's beer cans while I'm here.
That's so Coca-Cola thing. No, that's not. To me, that's not beer. No offense. Okay, did you like the stories? Now, if this works, the world premiere of Werewolves of Wheeling. Good. Don't forget to come back tonight, Adrian Knox, 7 p.m.
Island in the rain. She was looking for a place called Golden Chopsticks. Gonna get a big dish of tofu lo mein. Ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow, ow, werewolves of Wheeling. You hear her holler around your library door. You better not let her in. A little old clerk got me late last night. Werewolves of Wheeling again. Ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow, ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow. She's the hairy-headed gal who ran amok in Woodsdale. Lately she's been overheard in Warwood. You better stay away from her. She'll rip your books up, sir. I'd like to meet her publisher. Ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow. I saw Lady Gaga walking with Rosemary Mitchell, doing the werewolves of Wheeling. I saw John Corbett walking with Mayor Glenn, doing the werewolves of Wheeling. I saw a werewolf drinking a moon dog IPA later around the way, and her hair was a perfect. Ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow. Say it. Ow, werewolves of Wheeling. Ow. Ow. Werewolves of Wheeling.
I don't know what you think of this. You're scaring the man, so you're gonna have to leave.
Bridget at the end. That's
Oh, I can do much better.
So if you were an extra in the video, we have a lot of them here. Harold, Bridget, can you stand up? A few up there. Look, that video wouldn't have been possible without Adrian Niles, who's going to be here tonight. So please come back and see him. Jamie Peck recorded all the keyboard and the bass and recorded the whole song in his studio in Wheeling. So it was a great project to work on. So please come back and see Adrian tonight and support singer-songwriters from the Ohio Valley. So it was really great. Sean's taking a picture, so don't move.
Before we all leave, we're all going to howl one time. On 3, ready?
Lon Chaney Jr., ready? 1, 2, 3.